One game at a time answer. It's everywhere.
I know.
It's in every sports post-game interview. We're just taking one game at a time. If you had to predict, because that's what I'm going to ask you to do.
Sure.
UCLA, where do they end this run? Do they get back to the Final Four, or do they come up short?
No, I'll say they come up short of that. I mean, back-to-back Final Four is an extremely hard thing to do. UCLA is going to have a wonderful chance once we get to the bracket, whether it's a 3 seed, 4 seed, 5 seed, no matter where. It's got the personnel. And remember, this was a team preseason top 5 level. It's fallen a bit short of that to this point, but if it can get Juzang back, that ankle, get healed and be healthy, they'll have a fine shot at a deep run. These kind of questions are inevitable once we get to late February before we get a bracket, so it's hard to say without knowing what teams would be in UCLA's path to get to the Final Four. But ultimately, although I do consider UCLA a team good enough to win the national championship this season, and I do think, as we've talked about on the Eye on College Basketball podcast, that there are really 10 to 12 viable national championship contenders. UCLA's in that group. Just to me, I would have the Bruins somewhere like 9, 10, 11, 12 in that group. I don't think they're in the first 4, and I don't think they're in the second 4 after that. They can do it, but Hakeem, I just wouldn't have them being the most likely among that. But they made it out of the first 4 last season.
They did.
Now, different situation, single site. Not going to be the same deal this year, but I can't wait to see what this team does once we get to bracket play, because it's got the personnel and the defense to do it.
I'm just curious where they stack up with the current 1 seeds, Gonzaga, Auburn, Arizona, Kansas. Are they on that same level right now? Can they get there? Because those teams are super talented. UCLA is super talented, a team that's been together, and that means something going into the NCAA tournament, because a lot of these teams sometimes, they haven't played a lot together. Like you look at Kentucky teams, those are one-and-done teams, and so they get into those adverse situations, and they may not be able to carry on, whereas a team that's been there in the NCAA tournament, they're able to find a way.
There's something to be said for that, and I wouldn't put UCLA on Arizona's level, although, yes, Arizona and UCLA, they split the season series, and each of those teams getting the win against the other, they looked really good doing it. But there's a slight difference between not being on that team's level and not being able to defeat that team. Like, two things can be true at once. I just think, and most would agree, that Arizona to this point in the season on the whole has looked better. And I'm just picking Arizona because Hakeem brought it up, and they're in the same conference, and we've seen them play each other. They're not quite there, but there is... Listen, I can't speak to this because I never played in the NCAA tournament, but I can report after talking to coaches that they carry so much stock and value into having guys who have been there, had experience in the NCAA tournament, and getting the majority of a nucleus back to do it again. It could bode well for UCLA once we get to March. Just as a quick follow-up to that, I talked to Brad Underwood at Illinois just a couple of weeks ago. They got upset in the second round by Loyola Chicago last season, and he said the fact that we have so many guys back from the team that knows what it felt like to sit in that locker room after we got our butts kicked by Loyola Chicago is going to bode well, and he's got a ton of confidence that that group, no matter where Illinois winds up being seated, like it's not going to be the same story again. He expects that to be minimally a second weekend team. That's another reason why UCLA probably a fair bet, not an automatic, but a fair bet to at least make the second weekend no matter what seed line they're on.
You may have not played in the NCAA tournament, but you could have at least been on the second team of one of those teams, right? You could have been the scout team.
Sure, why not?
I don't know if people realize you're 6'4".
6'3" and
I gave you the extra.
All right.
I mean, you could probably dunk. I mean,
I once could.
You're dunking the segments here on CBS Sports HQ. Matt, thanks. And for more, of course, check out the Eye on College Basketball podcast as we take a look at the Pac-12 standings. Arizona atop 15-1, followed by USC 13-4, UCLA 13-5, Oregon 11-6. You got to like the chances for those top 4 teams to make some noise in the NCAA tournament.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.